It began with the Navy taking the Army across a calm channel in that dim light just before dawn. Navy, Army, and RAF combining in a bigger raid than any attempted so far. These pictures that you're seeing, and all those that follow, were taken during the actual operation. Pictures taken by a number of cameramen who shared the hazards of the day with their service comrades. The RAF, as we know, not only gave protection to Navy and Army, but also succeeded in provoking the biggest air battle in the West since the Battle of Britain. In the early morning, smoke lay thick on the sea near the beaches. Destroyers and smaller warships were laying screens behind which more craft could approach to follow up the first landings. That's little enough protection when you attempt to consider the difficulties of the assault. First, a voyage through enemy minefields, then a frontal attack in daylight on a part of the French coast which the Germans had boasted was impregnable. By patient training, by careful planning, and by sheer guts, Canadians and Commandos cracked up those impregnable defenses and stayed ashore, destroying and killing for 9 hours. This was the hardest time for the men in the landing craft and the escorting ships. Their job was now to stand off from the beaches and wait. Just that. Long hours must pass before they returned to re-embark the troops. That they were able to lie there waiting is a great tribute to the RAF. The enemy had been compelled to whistle up his reserves from secret stations all over France. But even in spite of the RAF umbrella, some ships were bombed. That was inevitable. While dogfights were raging over the sea, our Bostons were plastering Dieppe and targets nearby. Disregarding the flak pumped up from German ground defenses, they picked out their targets down there and let go. Down there, Canadians and Commandos fought like lions, with the Bostons also hitting their hardest. It was a reconnaissance in force, but whatever we call it, we can certainly take heart from this attack. Think back to those days in 1940 and 41, when the job was to keep the Hun away from English beaches and out of our skies. Now it's his job to keep us out, if he can. Our fighters were operating at extreme range. Half an hour over the other side, then back to refuel. And by the way, here's a sign of the times, British fighter aircraft in American service. The air battle raged all day. Planes going out, planes coming back to refuel. All day the air battle raged. There were big losses on both sides. But unlike the Battle of Britain, we were attacking this time. Yet the German losses were certainly as great, probably greater than our own. A Spitfire crashes. A pilot bails out. and a pilot is picked up. Those planes directed the rescue ship to the spot where a Canadian Spitfire pilot was keeping himself afloat till help came. Movietone's cameraman, Graham Thompson, was in the ship that picked him up. A dramatic piece of filming, if ever there was one. Thompson said the pilot had been in the water some time. You can see how exhausted he looks. All the same, he'd kept a cheery smile in reserve. We can be sure the force that landed struck a very hard blow. Many gallant men lost their lives, and others were captured, of course. But as for the rest, the ships that had waited all day brought them safely back. Tank landing craft were making their first appearance in a show of this kind. They took our tanks across, and if some of them came home light, well, you'd hardly expect to evacuate all the tanks. Anyway, the TLCs are all ready for the next job. And so are the boys. They had a tough job to do. They did it, and they'll do it again. He was in Graham Thompson's ship. His helmet fell off and a shell went right through it. Only one very hot moment when the ship was under heavy fire. That was the only tin of biscuits on board, that was. American Commandos, or Rangers to be correct. Just a handful were in on this show, but there'll be plenty more to follow, they tell me. And some of the wounded, including a war correspondent. They'd certainly been through it, but they were already talking about next time, even before they'd got into hospital. We collected a few views at random.
What happened to you, Hank?
Well, when I was getting off the landing craft, I got a little piece of shrapnel on my shoulder, and when I got on the beach, I got a couple of bullet holes through my hand and a piece of shrapnel on my face. But then I was pretty lucky. How about you, John?
Well, I had no time to duck. They were a little bit too fast for me, so next time I'll do my best and try to be a little bit faster so that they won't get me this time.
The going was pretty stiff. Men were dropping here and there, and lots of good prowls went west. With the evacuation order, 20 minutes before the evacuation order came, I got a piece of shrapnel in the shoulder. I'd like to say that the stretcher bearers were wonderful, and the boys all around, they've done a great job. It's too bad there's so many good men gone west, but I think it was well worth the effort we made, and we hope to go back there again pretty soon.
If it hadn't been for the Navy and the Air Force, why, I'm telling you, us fellows would have sure been SOL. The Navy and the Air Force sure done a wonderful job.
Back from a great show and talking of next time or handing the honor and glory to some other bloke. That's the spirit by which wars are won.